Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, February 20th, 2025. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. This week, our good friend Desiree Knott joins us with her new boss, Alex Long, founder of Dancing Skeleton Meadery in Sapulpa, Oklahoma. Desiree is taking the job of a head mead maker as she opens a delicious new chapter in her life. If you want to support us financially, check out patreon.com/basicbrewing, and many thanks to everybody who's helping out in that way. If you go to patreon.com/basicbrewing, you can see a long list of stuff that you can access if you sign up as a supporter. And many thanks to the new Patreon subscribers who are signing up every week. Your help is very much appreciated. Financial supporters will see an early release later this week of the episode that Steve and I shot about my hoppy Belgian Golden Ale. That's the one that was dry hopped with Nectaron and Idaho 7. That was a delicious beer. And it's all gone. It's just a memory. Financial supporters will also receive the recipe and a behind-the-scenes video where you'll see my old propane setup back in action. It's cold here in northwest Arkansas. We had a fair amount of snow yesterday, not as much as they predicted, and the temps are going to be down into the single digits overnight for the rest of the week. Whew. People don't cope with that very well around here. I guarantee you that the bread shelves are empty at the local grocery stores. What do people do without all that bread? I guess kids want sandwiches when they're home on a snow day. I don't know. Perfect weather for a lager, though. Speaking of which, how do you like that transition? I kegged my Bock a couple of days ago. That's the one that we formulated on this show. I brewed it with the L18 Goat, the seasonal lager yeast from our friends and sponsors at Imperial Yeast. I did make a starter, although Goat zipped through that 2 liters of wort in a very short amount of time. So, I'm wondering if it was really necessary. Either way, I chilled the 1066 Bock wort down to 55 degrees Fahrenheit, or 13°C, pitched the dregs of my starter, aerated with oxygen, and put it in the kegerator to get to work. And my airlock, while it wasn't bubbling before bedtime, because it was chilly, but it was certainly bubbling before breakfast. 3 days later, as the fermentation slowed, I brought the fermenter out to room temperature for a diacetyl rest, and then 9 days after pitching, I kegged it. It's been in there for a couple of days. It's already delicious. It smells very malty. L18 Goat, fermented very cleanly. There's a nice malty sweetness that is balanced by the bittering hops and the carbonation. So good. It went from 1066 to 1011, so I figure the ABV is around 7.2%. It's really good. Really good. I can't wait to share it with the guys. Ask your local homebrew store about L18 Goat from Imperial Yeast. It's the current seasonal yeast. Take advantage of the cold tap water for your chiller and brew you a lager. Check out all the dependable deliciousness at imperialyeast.com. That's imperialyeast.com. Hey, well, I'm thinking about it. I'm planning to talk to our friend Gary Glass on Monday about being head brewer at Left Hand Brewing and about being on the founding board of directors of the newly independent American Homebrewers Association. The AHA is no longer under the wing of the Brewers Association anymore. I'm excited about talking to Gary about the new direction of the AHA, and I plan on getting some left-hand beers to sample while we talk. So I need help with questions. Please email me your questions about either left-hand brewing or the AHA. And I look forward to that conversation. That's on Monday, so do it before Monday, please. Okay, Alex Long founded Dancing Skeleton Meadery just a few years ago, starting very small and building on the business as it became more successful. Now, Dancing Skeleton Meads are widely distributed in Oklahoma and Arkansas, and Alex has brought on our good friend Desiree to help the meadery grow even more into the future. Well, Desiree Knott, welcome back to Basic Brewing Radio.
Good to be back.
Now, you're coming back in a new capacity, which we're about to talk about. Joining us on the line is your new boss, Alex Long of Dancing Skeleton Meadery in Sapulpa, Oklahoma. Welcome, Alex.
Thank you.
Now, I hardly know where to start. Desiree, I'm so excited. I'm always glad to talk to you, especially I hope you consider us good friends.
Well, of course, yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely. Absolutely. Positively. For sure.
So I always love getting together with you, but now I'm excited because you're starting a new adventure,
Yes.
and you're working with Alex. What are you doing?
So Alex has had dancing skeleton meadery, what, 4.5 years, Alex? Is that right?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And it's growing and growing, and it's becoming very difficult for him to do sales and promotion, and then also keep up with production. And so he asked me to come help him and take over the production of the meads. So I'm the head mead maker, I guess you'd call me. Mazer. I'm the head mazer.
Mead maker is more easily understandable, I think, by most people. So, Alex, congratulations. I think you made a wise hire. What attracted you to having Desiree around the place?
I needed somebody that could come in and take where I left off, so to speak, on production. Needed somebody who already knew what they were doing, and it was. Do have to say it was a tad bit intimidating offering one of my mentors a job working for me. But with Desiree, you get over that in a great big hurry. Um, but
Yeah, yeah. He said that when we were first doing like when I first got there, because it's so nice to get a hydrometer and not have to explain what that is to somebody.
Yeah, I guess for those who are just clued in, who haven't been following us for the past 20 years, Desiree and Dave used to own High Gravity winemaking and brewing and homebrew supply there in Tulsa, and you kind of fostered the current generation of brewers and now mead makers in Tulsa. So the roles kind of reversed a little bit.
Yes, so I would definitely, yes. I honestly, I've been kind of in limbo trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I don't know if depressed is the right word, but yeah, we'll just say depressed. And so when this opportunity came up, I actually kind of got excited. I was like, there's something I can get involved in again that I can be proud of, and be excited to do. So this is I'm very happy for the opportunity.
And Dave, we got to say, is running Small Batch Boutique there in Broken
Arrow.
Arrow. I always get Broken
Broken
Arrow
Arrow.
and Broken Bow mixed up, and so. But I've been ordering from him, and everything's going great. I'm getting the ingredients in good shape, and everything's fresh and wonderful. So things are going down the road. Uh, Alex, bring us up to speed. What is Dancing Skeleton, and how did you get started in mead making in the beginning, and then how did you get off the ground professionally?
Well, I'll just kind of go in chronological order. A few years ago, I'd known what mead was for a long time. And then many years ago, I forget, I saw mead on the shelf of the local liquor store, and I bought it on a whim, took it home, tried it, and loved it. And I started asking around who all had it because I wanted to try other brands, other flavors. And one day, the company that I worked for was doing an outing at a bar, and I asked the bartender if they had mead, and he kind of got excited. And he said, "No, but I make it 5 gallons at a time." And I said, "You can do that?" And he sent me over to the homebrew store in Tulsa, High Gravity. And a couple months later, my wife and daughter and I was driving around, just shopping, and a Saturday afternoon out of the house, and I saw the store, and I told my wife, "Hey, I want to go in there and look around." She's like, "Mm-hmm, look around, yeah, right." No, I'm just gonna look. I'm not going to get anything. She's like, "Yeah." So they went into store next door, and I went in, and staff was great. I think it was Amanda that was working at the time. One thing that was really nice was it was a no pressure experience, not like, "Oh, let me try to sell you something." It's like, "Well, if you want to beat this, here's what you need, and here's some optional things that would help." And I bought the kit, took it home, and as I was wheeling it out to the car, my wife come out with this look on her face, like, Yeah, I knew it. I took the kit home, followed the directions to the letter, and it came out perfect. Started sharing it with friends, and some of them was saying, "This is the greatest thing I've ever tasted. You need to sell this." And at the time, I was like, "Well, thank you. Followed the directions." Uh, imagine what happens when you do that. But I kept doing it, refining my techniques, coming up with my own recipes. Also started making beer at the time just for practice fermentation and that sort of thing. And started really enjoying beer and got involved in the local homebrew club. Mead was always where my passion was. And as time went on, I would notice that mead was a growing industry across North America. There wasn't really anybody in Northeast Oklahoma making mead commercially in as their primary product line. There are some wineries around that would make a mead as a side product here and there, but nobody as their flagship. I was getting more and more burnout with my day job and made the decision to uh, give it a go commercially. The last few years of my previous career, I had worked progressively closer and closer with the business owners and decision makers and watching the kinds of problems they were having to solve. And I realized that you can do that. If you take any problem and break it down into small enough chunks, it becomes simply a sequence of tasks.
Mm.
If you have a problem that you can't break down, you move on to something else and come back to that one later because there's never a shortage of work to be done. And when I launched, I still had my day job. And what my metric of success was going to be was if somebody liked it enough to come back and buy a second bottle. I needed to see if I could industrialize my own practices and sell the product at a price point that people could afford to drink it. And debuted on the market in September of 2020. And within a month, when I was running out of inventory, I realized, okay, this is working. So I stopped what I was doing, moved into a bigger facility, and scaled up my production. And then at the end of April 2021, quit my day job and have been a full-time mead maker entrepreneur ever since.
Wow, congratulations, especially during the challenging times of COVID. You made it happen.
Yes, in fact, that kind of hate to say that kind of worked out to my benefit because seeing that most everything was closed, I didn't bother trying to open a tasting room at the time. I decided to make my business model that of going to where people already were at, setting up as a vendor in premise events, so that people, instead of trying to lure people to me, going to where they were, let people taste, ask questions, sample, and then either sell them a bottle there on the spot or direct them to the nearest retailer that carried it. And being that I had a product that was largely unfamiliar to the general public, that worked. And for good or bad, during COVID didn't hurt alcohol sales.
Mm.
So people are still eager for a bottle of wine and eager to try mead.
And I'm going to open the first. I've got two of your meads here. The first one is called Golden Hour honey wine. There may be some noise as I'm working this old fashioned corkscrew here, but you call your meads honey wine. Is that for educational purposes or is that legal?
Yes. Legally, mead is licensed and taxed as a wine in the United States and the state of Oklahoma and Arkansas. And so you can call it mead, you can call it honey wine. And I discovered very early on when introducing mead to people unfamiliar with it was that a lot of people had a misconception that mead was a type of beer. I was one of those people once upon a time. And so by calling it honey wine on the label, it just squashes that notion right off the bat. And then if somebody already knows what mead is and they see the word honey wine, it doesn't confuse them. They're like, that's mead? By squashing the notion that it's not a type of beer, I don't have to manage a negative reaction from somebody. One of my goals was to make a product for people who want something local, who may or may not like beer or wine. And a lot of people trying it and liking it are looking for that. Now, I don't like beer. I don't like wine. What else do you got?
So I have some golden hour here too, so I can drink it with you here, James.
Hey, cheers.
Cheers.
So what do you? I'll rely on your professional palate, Desiree.
Oh my
What
God.
are we tasting here? I assume that this is the base product, the basic product.
So you're gonna have to. I just now started working there, so I'm not familiar with all the honey varietals that are
Mhm.
going into the meads. What is the golden hour? What's the base honey for that?
That one is tallow honey, honey from tallow blossoms from tallow trees along the Texas Gulf Coast region.
Okay.
The tallow trees in North America is considered an invasive species, so a
Yes,
lot of
it is.
environmentalists don't like that the trees are here, but it produces a beautiful honey, so beekeepers love it.
Hmm. Yeah, it's not just your average wildflower honey. There's an
Right.
interesting,
That honey varietal has a natural bitterness to it.
yeah,
And being that that is a semi-sweet mead, that bitterness dries out the finish. So it'll start out with a little bit of sweetness and then finish dry. So it's a
Yeah.
nice option for somebody who doesn't want something staying sweet in the on the finish.
yeah. It's not a dessert mead. It's sweet, like you said, on the front end, but then at the end, there's that little bit of bitterness, kind of like hops in beer.
Yeah.
It helps add a balance. Um, I want to say there's like almost mesquite. Does that make it like a mesquite kind of?
So, being that it is coming from Texas, it very well could have some mesquite blossom in it. In order for a honey to be classified as a monofloral
Mm.
honey, it has at least 60% of the nectar has to come from a single flower source. So that particular honey varietal is at least 60% coming from tallow trees. Well, that other 40% could be part tallow, clover, mesquite could be, and it could be a lot of mesquite. It could be upwards of 40% mesquite. A lot of mesquite honey is coming out of Texas, so that is very possible that you're tasting that.
It's delicious. It's really good. It's. I was expecting it to be kind of more, like I say, like a wildflower honey, like something that's like everybody would love it right away. Just like, oh, this is tastes like honey that I get in the little bears or whatever. But this is more fun. It's more complex and
Definitely more
it
complex.
makes you think about it more than just like, oh, this is good. This is sweet.
It has a lot of stone fruit character to me, like apricot kind of
Yeah, yeah.
notes. Matter of fact, I looked down after I thought that I looked down and it's actually on the label, notes of apricot on there. Um, so this is the thing that I find is very fascinating with honey, and the more I'm working with Alex, the more I'm appreciating it. Is that the honeys are all so very different. I
Hmm.
mean, but how many varietals of honey in?
North America alone has over 300 different honey varietals.
Wow.
And I took a picture several, it was the Cinco de Mayo event that was on Route 66 in Sapulpa, and we happened to have our booth right next to Alex, and he had all of his meads laid out, and it was just this rainbow of colors,
Hmm.
and it was just it was the coolest thing. So, and I took a picture of it because I was just amazed at how different all these meads looked when they were just, these are all traditional meads, which is another thing that I think Alex should, like be really proud of is that these are all traditional meads. He is not using adjuncts or any other kinds of flavorings to make his mead. They're traditional meads. So what you're tasting is what is in the honey with the proper combination of the yeast that brings out those characteristics of that honey. And then several of them are oaked. Most of them are oaked, right? So that's the
Most are
only
oak.
thing really.
A couple of the semi-sweets that already have their own natural bitterness aren't oaked, but I think we have exactly two flavors that are not oaked. The rest
Yeah.
are oaked, two various levels.
Yeah. And there's only one uh, uh in the lineup, it's 8 o'clock somewhere that has it actually has cold pressed coffee in it,
Oh.
but it is the only one. All the others are straight varietal traditional meads, and it sets them apart from all the other meaderies that I think exist in the United States because all the meaderies want to add fruit. They want to add craziest stuff to it. They it kind of reminds me of the craft beer craze, where you have to make these crazy beers to make them interesting. And I just don't think you have to do that. I think that you don't need to add all this extra stuff to make the meads exciting and have them taste great.
Yeah,
You can,
your mention of coffee reminds me that I saw that y'all have a coffee blossom mead actually made from
yes,
the flowers of a coffee plant. Do you get what character is that? Do you actually get well? Sure, coffee is all about the roast, so it's not going to
right. So,
taste like a
and you're
cup of
not getting
coffee.
that right. Yeah.
So what's a coffee blossom mead taste like?
So that one has some pineapple and mango flavors with kind of a peppery bergamot finish.
Hmm.
So it's very fruity with some spicy undertones, with no coffee notes whatsoever. So you have to think about the nectar that's in that little flower rather than what's growing on the vines.
That's also another fascinating thing to me too, is because so many of these honeys, they don't taste like, avocados. I mean, one of them is made from avocado blossom. Which one is that one, Alex?
That one is after midnight, and avocado blossom honey is jet black. It looks
It
like
is
tar
so
coming
cool
out of a
looking. It
Oh
is so cool
wow.
looking. Yeah. I took a video of it. Of the
Our good friend Tim Lieber, the mead maker, has shared many interesting and obscure varieties of honey or meads
uh-huh.
made with those. And it's always just so fascinating to me that just honey and water and yeast and nutrients. Uh, Different honeys make completely different beverages.
Yes.
Both the mouthfeel, the flavor, just the aromas, the whole experience changes so much. Which Desiree, is that a shift to you? I mean, because you made some meads at high gravity, but your
Right.
main focuses were beer and wine.
Right.
So how is that to shift the paradigm into going from beer where you can pretty much combine all these different ingredients to make a flavor or a beer that you are envisioning
Right.
to kind of letting the honey lead to where you're going.
It is so it just reminds me of making wine, where I did, you just have to accept that those are the flavors that's in that grape, and just figure out how to accentuate and make sure that you get, you know, a good expression of the characters of that honey.
Hmm.
And Alex, um, let's just say, I mean, I didn't know what to expect when I started there. When I've been there about a month now, Alex, is that about right?
Yeah, yeah.
I wasn't sure what to expect, but he has done what I think is just a fabulous job with like best practices, and he's really so. Uh, a lot of people when they decide, oh, I want to own a brewery, I'm going to start a brewery, I'm a home brewer, people love my beer, or the same, you can do the kind of the same with the mead, and they just kind of become these glorified large scale home brewers or whatever, and they don't hone their craft. They just kind of they just are making big batches of homebrew. But Alex has really put a lot of effort into understanding, this yeast does that, and and so his best practices are, this match nutrient with this yeast. This is a high nitrogen. This needs low nitrogen. I mean, so uh, so I haven't really had to do a lot because I came in and Alex has already kind of got it all figured out. I just got to come in and just,
Now you're the one who's following the instructions.
yes, yes, exactly right.
One thing about Desiree is that besides being coming from being a fantastic brewer, she's also an amazing cook or chef, and what that emphasizes is that she understands flavor and palate, and what is this going to do to your senses when you consume it, and it's something that was an excellent addition to the skeleton crew.
And I just love that we call it the skeleton crew.
That's the name of our team.
I love it.
You just have a skeleton crew. Well, being a small operation, you probably do run pretty lean as far as number of personnel.
Yeah, we have me and Desiree on production, and then probably about four people that help us on the sales side on a regular basis, plus uh, about 4 additional people that jump in and help for special events and special occasions. If we're
Festivals and
doing
things
like
like that.
a special holiday dinner in the Meadery, or if we're doing a particularly big event like the Tulsa State Fair or something like that.
Wow.
I'm actually kind of looking forward to helping with the fair and stuff. I think
Oh,
that'll be fun.
yeah. Sounds like it. Now, it, I had to search around a bit, Alex, to find some interviews and some more deep information. You don't do a whole lot of interviews.
No, only when somebody comes to me, and that's been about 3 or 4 times that I can recall.
Well, luckily there's an interview with you on YouTube, and I think the name of the channel is it called TK and Drinks, something like that. If you go on YouTube and you search for Dancing Skeleton Meadery, it's in one of the videos that pops up. Our friend and I've had 2 sips of mead, and already Garrett from Man-Made Mead did an interview with you as well.
Yes.
But the video that the TK and Drinks it shows your operation, or at least the state of it 2 years ago, and I was amazed at kind of how low tech everything is, and you went. It looks like you. I mean, you didn't. It's not all a forest of stainless tanks, and it doesn't. If you didn't know what you were looking at, you might not know that you were looking at a meadery. I hope you'll take that in the right way.
Right. So there's a couple of different things that were on purpose. First of all, the meadery is essentially self-funded. So we didn't take out on outside investors or borrow $500,000 from the bank. I didn't use my home as collateral to open it. Coming from an IT background, one of the approaches that you take to IT or philosophies is you plan for failure. What are you going to do if something goes wrong? And how are you going to recover from it? Well, something that I planned from day one is what happens if this doesn't work and I'm not able to stay in business? Well, I'm not going to lose my home over it. So we're deliberately small and scaling up. We didn't start out doing 500-gallon batches and hoping that we can sell that. And consequently, that means a slower growth. But I've always believed that, or not just a belief, I've seen this in IT companies, is that companies that whose sales explode, they also tend to crash just as fast when the fad is over, or if they can't keep up and customers get mad and go somewhere else. Slow and steady wins the race.
Mm-hmm.
Also, we take a slightly different approach than other meaderies as well. One meadery that I visited, they had 4 500-gallon tanks, and we have, I think, right now about 20 55-gallon tanks. So we have fewer tanks, more batches. But one meadery that I visited, and I'm not picking on anybody by name. I'm not even picking on them. This is just their process. One thing that they do is they pasteurize their mead and will kill off spoilage organisms and prevent re-fermentation, but it also destroys flavors and aromas. They probably did that because they had a batch develop an infection of some kind or started re-fermentation in the bottle or inside the tank when they were trying to age it. That's my speculation. Well, if you have 4 tanks and one of them develops an infection, you just lost a quarter of your product. Having 20 tanks, if one of them restarts fermenting in the bottle or develops an infection, which we've not had yet, would.
Cross fingers, knock on wood.
Yeah, then we've only lost 1/20th of our production line. So more tanks, smaller batches mean that something does go wrong, it's less damage to the operation.
Yeah, and I think that's very sound. I mean, it was kind of the same when we opened up, the tap room for Pippin's. When much easier to dump 2 barrels of beer than 20 barrels of beer.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just it feels safer.
Yeah, for sure. And describe your vessels. I mean, there's not a cone in sight in the video that I saw. But
We're fermenting in 55-gallon plastic drums, high-density polyethylene. And we're aging in plastic aging tanks that was developed by Spiegel. I think I'm pronouncing that right. And the aging tanks were made specifically for winemaking by the German company Spiegel. The fermenters, though, it's the same material, high density polyethylene. That's what we're using for fermenters. It's low tech.
Keep it simple.
And it also helps out in that since we are small batch, one batch of mead will use for the fermentation, we'll use set amount of water. It will use exactly 2 buckets of honey, exactly 1 packet of yeast, and exactly 1 packet of yeast energizer for the rehydration. So we're not for at the start. We just fill up to a line with water, and we're not having to measure honey, not having to measure yeast, not having to measure the energizer. So on days where we call it brew days, where we're starting new batches, it's just dump, stir, and then move on to the next one.
And you're not storing product in large packages that you have to measure out, which increases risks of infection. I mean, it's one package open. I think it's just a good way to go.
Yeah. And so I've opened the second one now.
So did I.
Thank goodness y'all are talking. This one is called Buck the System.
This is one of my favorite ones.
Buck the System, made with buckwheat blossom honey, hence the name Buck. Some of the flavors name themselves, by the way. Buckwheat blossom honey is a dark, earthy, robust honey. And when fermented and oaked, it's actually a combination of a blend of buckwheat blossom honey and a little bit of clover honey. When fermented with the right yeast and oaked, it has some bourbon-like character to it and is quite popular among bourbon drinkers. But despite that, it is not a glass of whiskey. So even somebody that doesn't like bourbon or whiskey in general can still drink it and appreciate it.
So there is oak in this?
Yes, that one is one of the more heavily oaked.
Yeah, I was going to say
one of the requirements of bourbon is that it ages in an American oak barrel, so we use American oak cubes in the tank, and that's something that we do rather than use expensive and messy barrels. We put oak cubes inside of the tank, and it gives the same effect as the barrel, but a fraction of the cost and almost none of the mess. Since we don't have a forklift in the meadery, so we don't have the ability to move barrels around.
I've always hated the barrels. They're hard to upkeep. They're hard to maintain. They mold. They and
leak.
You're getting the exact same result. A lot of wineries actually use stainless steel tanks and just throw the oak in the tank. They don't actually put them in barrels for that same reason. More control, predictable results.
Is there a toast to the oak in this?
Yes, that one uses a medium toast oak. On that note, for anybody out there not familiar, there's 3 species of oak that's more readily available for winemaking. There's American oak, French oak, and Hungarian oak. It's more, but those are the common ones. And then for each of those oaks, there's light toast, medium toast, and heavy toast. So when you change the oak species and change the toast level, you're going to get different results. So just by changing the type of oak and the toast of the oak, you have 9 different oak options just on it with the oak alone.
Wow. This is delicious as well.
I really like this one. It's earthy and it, like you said, kind of that bourbony note, and it's rich. It has like a rich character to it, but it's also not cloyingly sweet like a lot of sack sweet meads. This one is it's a sweet mead. It's not a sack mead. You know what I mean? It's not super sweet, but it's not sweet.
It's not syrupy.
Right, exactly.
We're not just drinking maple syrup right out of the jug.
Exactly. Yes.
It
has a great body to it.
I don't know if I'm fooling myself, but I get the reason I asked about the toast is I'm getting just a half a molecule of smoke, just a tiny bit on the nose.
Yeah.
And I guess that's the toast off the oak, but it's not
correct.
I like to say about overly oaked things, it's like chewing on a table leg. This is not like chewing on a table leg.
There's a fella named Derek Jensen out of Norman, Oklahoma, that runs a Facebook page called Oklahoma Wine Culture. He likes to talk about the Oklahoma wine industry and agritourism in general. And he describes over oaked wines as drinking wine out of a 2x4.
Right. Yeah, I've equated it to like drinking plywood. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. A little too much of a good thing. No, it's very nice. I don't have that much experience with buckwheat honey. So Alex, what are the notes that we're looking for with a buckwheat honey?
Buckwheat honey, there's two different species of buckwheat. There's Eastern and Western buckwheat. Eastern buckwheat is very barnyard like, and you have to be very careful with it. We use Western buckwheat, which is
Thank
a lot
God.
more palatable. The Eastern buckwheat, you could still get some good results if you're almost certainly going to want to blend it with other honeys, and also choosing the right yeast to complement it.
Hmm.
And even barnyard is just the way it's described by the honey industry. That's not my words, but it can still be interesting. If you think about a spice like sage or bay leaf or something, if you or oregano, you go and get a mouthful of bay leaf, you're not going to enjoy it. But just a small amount will take something that's good and give it a little extra something. So even the Eastern buckwheat can still have its place if you're creative with what other honeys or other things you're blending it with.
I'm a bay leaf skeptic, but that's me. Of course, I only get the ones that have been desiccated for however long and, come out of a little jar.
And the first time I bought like bay leaves from Penzeys Spices, I was like, oh, I had no idea that these had an aroma.
Yeah.
Yeah, usually I feel like you're just putting like dried paper,
Yeah.
like crumbling like old parchment into your dinner. But yeah,
Yeah.
fresh bay leaves just like blows you away.
I tried to convince Susan to get a bay leaf bush or tree or shrub or whatever but it hasn't worked yet. So, talk about. I mean, one of the main things when we get together and talk, especially with Tim Lieber about meads, is nutrition, because unlike beer, which carries its own nutrients, honey is not the most fertile ground for yeast to properly and healthfully grow. So what are your nutrient strategies, and is it one size fits all for all of your meads?
So it's a two-part process. First of all, it starts with how we rehydrate the yeast, and then a staggered nutrient addition after pitching. Rehydrating the yeast, we rehydrate it with a product called Firm Start, which is a kind of an evolution of the product called Go Firm. And that has some nutrients that the yeast need at rehydration. So when you have dry yeast cells, as the yeast is expanding and absorbing water, it's also absorbing these particular nutrients as well. And then once these cells are nice and rehydrated, I'm going to quote, I think Ken Graham, who's quoting somebody else, that the yeast is healthy but hungry. So when you pitch it into your must, it's going to get to a nice rigorous start, and not only give you a cleaner fermentation, but also help attack spoilage organisms and competing yeast from the air.
Mm-hmm.
So that is the rehydration part. And then there's that Firm Start or Go Firm doesn't have all the nutrients that the yeast need, like nitrogen and a couple of other things that I forget the names of. So we use a product called Fermade O. There are two different ones. There's Fermade O and Fermade K. They're similar. The Fermade O is the organic version. I'm not one that's really on the organic bandwagon, but I have had very good results with the Fermade O, the organic version. So that's the one that we use. And that's a 4-stage process where that's added at 24, 48, 72 hours, and then a fourth one but sometime between day 4 and day 7.
Huh.
You just need to add the fourth one before the third sugar break. And the amount that's added is dependent on your starting gravity and the nitrogen requirements of the specific yeast strain you're using. So if you've got a high starting gravity and or if you have a yeast strain that has a high nitrogen requirement, then you use more of it than a low starting gravity or another yeast strain. And when you buy the yeast, um, the suppliers will usually say if a yeast has low, medium, or high nitrogen requirements. And then there's a website called meadery.com that has a calculator that you put in your starting gravity and the yeast you're using and the size batch, and it'll tell you what the nutrient additions should be.
It's a nice site. I was impressed with that.
Sort of crowdsourcing, kind of getting data from everybody and working it all into into common knowledge. Yeah. That's the best thing about the internet, I think, is brewing has gotten a lot better.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Knowledge is power.
Yes, yes. The feedback loop is wonderful in this process. I noticed on the bottle that it says contains sulfites.
Yes. I love talking about sulfites because I have a lot of people come by and say that they can't drink wine because the sulfites give them a headache. And that may be true, but there's actually like 8 different things in a wine that can give you an adverse reaction, and sulfites take the blame for all 8 of them.
Yeah,
ethanol
exactly.
ethanol is in there somewhere.
Um, the tannins from the grape skins, if it's a red wine, it could be the sulfites, could be alcohol, like you said, could be dehydration. There's also histamines and something else in wines. But sulfites are naturally occurring during the fermentation. And I read a statistic recently that French red wines will have around 70 parts per million sulfites. Well, a mead with natural fermentation without adding any additional sulfite can have up to 40 parts per million sulfites. So it can already have a fair amount of sulfite in it just naturally from the fermentation.
Well, my question was not about trying to scare people about sulfites because I don't know nothing. My question, but I'm glad you gave that information. It's good information. My question was about back sweetening.
Yes. So any of our meads except for the dry ones, the way we make them is we ferment to complete dryness, stabilize, and back sweeten. That way we can control the exact alcohol level and exact sweetness level. And stabilizing, we use sulfite and sorbate, and that will prevent it from re-fermenting in the bottle. When the yeast, it'll ferment to complete dryness if you don't stabilize it, as you're aware. When you go to back sweeten it, the yeast will wake up and continue consuming sugar, and eventually get to a point where the yeast just kind of mostly gives up, but it makes it hard to control the alcohol level that way. If we want the ABV to be 12% alcohol, then we have to cut it off, and that either uses stabilizing with sulfite and sorbate or pasteurizing. If you pasteurize, you destroy flavors and aromas. So we choose the option to maintain maximum flavor.
And if you pasteurize, you've got to have some heat in your brewery or in your meadery, and that brings in another level of technology and
exactly.
complications. It's what about oxygen? Do you add oxygen pre-fermentation?
So we have this electric mixer that we attach a paddle to when we pour honey into the bucket that just gets a real whirlpool going, and it's well aerated by the time the honey is dissolved in the water. So I started out with I'd have an O2 tank with one of those aeration ones with a little stone on the end, and I'd aerate it really good. And then one day I was about to start a batch of mead. I'd mixed the honey with the water, and it was go time, and I realized that my oxygen tank was empty, and it was like on a late Saturday night, and there was nowhere that I was going to be able to get any So I just decided, you know what, I'm just going to skip it this batch, and didn't notice any different in the end result. So I just kind of quit doing it.
I had a similar experience. I
I feel the same way. Again, same way about beer. People get all into the super oxygenating, and I just make sure that as I'm transferring it,
you
plenty of
splash. You
oxygen to
splash.
splash it around. Yeah, yeah. It's gonna if you're doing a healthy pitching of yeast, you're gonna be fine.
Yeah, the only and I have no data on whether it's necessary or not, but the only time that I get really conscious and drag out I don't dust it off because it's in a Ziploc bag, but I drag out my O2 stone when I'm doing either a lager or a very high gravity beer, and then I worry, just as an insurance policy.
It's an insurance
You
policy.
pitch plenty of yeast. It doesn't hurt anything to put the oxygen in there, but
Right.
So Desiree, here you are. You're used to being in the beer world
Mhm.
and a bit in the wine world, but with beer, you can turn around a product in just a few weeks, basically. Now you're talking several months from
Right.
starting the process to actually having something in the bottle.
Right.
You're only a short time into it. How is it? Is it changing gears without a clutch to to start thinking about like that, or how are you facing that?
Just the thing is production and scheduling, and just make sure that you prepare. I mean, Alex, I'm sure has been in crunches before where he's like, "Damn, I really wanted this to age for 9 months, but sorry, 6 months is gotta do because you got to get it into a bottle." But that's why they brought me on, is so that hopefully we can get production to a point where we can actually let it age as long as we want it to age.
Mm.
Uh, but honestly, it hasn't been that big of a mindset change, really. I mean, just because doing the wine, I'm used to aging the wine, so it's kind of equated to the winemaking side, and just gear up your production so that it can age the amount of time you want it to age, so that it's primed when you get it into the bottle.
And Alex, you're used to doing this by now after doing it for a few years, but
Yes.
but when you're starting a mead, you've got to be thinking what 6, 7, 8, 9, how many months out ahead,
Yeah.
depending on the
The
mead.
meats that we're making now are really going to be going into bottles for the Thanksgiving and Christmas season.
Wow.
But we're now to the point where it's no longer a matter of forecasting how much we need. It's a matter of keeping the tanks going at all times. And if we empty a tank, to rack it out of a fermenter to age, as soon as we can get another batch started in that tank, because we're pretty much to the point that we are uh, selling it as fast as we can make it.
Wow. Nice.
And now that we've bought a few more tanks, and so we've got as many tanks as we have the ability to squeeze into the building. So it's no longer an issue of we need to make mead. It's which flavor are we going to run out of next? Hurry up, let's get some more of that flavor into a tank as soon as we have one available.
So if people go to Sapulpa, Oklahoma, and go to the Dancing Skeleton Meadery tap room,
Mm-hmm.
how many meads are we going to see?
So when all flavors are in stock, I think right now we've got 19 flavors, and we're about to debut a 20th sometime later in the spring. And then inside the meadery, we also have some dry red wines that we make in house, some hard ciders that we make in house, and then we have a few craft beer options that we carry from a local brewery.
Wow.
It used to be ours, but
Aw.
now it's the Nook.
Oh.
So shout out to the Nook.
Is there a motel within crawling distance of yours? That's my
There's
question.
Airbnbs in the neighborhood.
Now I found a new goal. But I'm lucky in that I was able to find your meads like within 15 minutes of my house down the highway, and you're in a bunch of places.
Yeah, we're now licensed to distribute in Arkansas, and in Arkansas, we're just in Northwest Arkansas at the moment. Hoping to get in. I was hoping to get in Fort Smith this coming week, but with snow and ice, I don't think I'm going to be leaving the house, let alone leaving town. But across Oklahoma and Arkansas, I think we're somewhere hitting close to 130 stores at the moment.
Wow.
And we only sell to liquor stores. We don't sell to grocery stores or convenience stores, so that our retail partners aren't having to compete with big box retailers.
Yeah, and you've got somebody there, hopefully, in the liquor store that knows a little bit more about your product than the grocery store.
When the big box retailers, it was only fairly recently, within the last 8 to 10 years, that grocery stores and convenience stores was able to start selling wine. And when they started carrying it, they didn't bring on additional staff. They just added additional inventory. So they don't have anybody in the building that can tell you the difference between a red wine and a mead.
And your product is not. I mean, I don't know much about wine, but your product is fairly reasonable. It's Desiree, correct me if I'm wrong. It's the price of a good bottle of wine, right?
Yes. I would equate it. Yes, definitely the price of a good bottle of wine. Yes.
So it's not a product that would just like, when you're when you're next to,
if you don't know what you're buying and you're at a grocery store and they're not going to have good priced wines there. Basically, they're going to be $8.
There are going to be pictures of feet and kangaroos on.
Yes. Yes. So they would see the bottle of wine there and they'd go, "Wow," because look, grocery stores typically aren't going to carry a lot of high end wines. There. So yeah.
Yeah, the Small Mart in Farmington, Arkansas is not the place to. But just down the road at the other place I went to, you can find it. So, I really want to go to the tap room because I want to taste, maybe not all 20, but I want to. I don't know.
Can stay the night at our place.
There you go. If you'll drive me.
Absolutely.
Oh man, I'm so happy that we got together. I'm so happy that Desiree, you found a new chapter.
Yes, me too.
And I'm sure that Alex, that Desiree will add a lot of important and vital vitality into your. I've had a little mead. And I'm so excited to have been able to talk to you. And your meads are fantastic. And I'll be looking for more.
Yeah, I also want to point out there's Dancing Skeleton Meadery.com.
Oh, okay.
So he has a list of all the places where you can purchase the mead.
Which is how I found it.
And we are looking at a bottle program, which hopefully will be announced in the next few months.
Oh, fun.
Once we get all the kinks ironed out of our planning on that. So.
Fun.
And we can ship anywhere in the U.S., right, Alex?
44 states we're able to ship to right now.
Yeah. So you can order online if you're not in Oklahoma or near a liquor store that has it, and order it online and we'll ship it to you.
Fantastic. Well, Desiree and Alex, thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun.
Thanks
for having us.
Many thanks to Desiree and to Alex. Delicious meads, very well crafted. Sign me up for that bottle program. It's going to be great. Go to dancingskeletonmeadery.com to find out how you can get your hands on some mead and see some fun cocktail recipes, too. If you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say howdy, and remember, send me your questions for Gary Glass for the AHA and Left Hand Brewing conversation. Write to James at basicbrewing.com or just fill out the contact form on basicbrewing.com. And please don't forget to tell us where you're from. Check out our mobile-friendly shop at basicbrewingshop.com. Thanks to everybody supporting us. There are a Patreon page. Special goodies coming your way. Check that out at patreon.com/basicbrewing. It's all until next time. Until then, thanks for listening, everybody. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio and our website is provided by Kelly Dotson. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. We'll talk to you next time, everybody. In the meantime, stay well and stay tuned. So long.